Okay, and what is your name?
So, I am Gopal from India, and I am heading an organization called Ekta Parishad. Ekta Parishad is not an NGO, it is a mass movement working for land, forest, and water. People's control over land, forest, and water. That is the agenda of Ekta Parishad.
Huh. And how do you, work on land reform issues, and what kind of policies are in place in India for land reform?
So, India was under British rule for many years. So they used jamindars, the landlords, to collect tax. So jamindar had all the land, and he will lease land and collect taxes. So it was all kind of a very feudal system in India in terms of land management. After the freedom, back in 1947, various governments introduced policies for land redistribution, land reforms. One important policy direction was called Land Ceiling Act. The government decided that one family can only keep 40 acres of dry land and 20 acres of wetland. So this was the way the government wanted to get surplus land for redistribution to the landless people. To some extent that succeeded, but then to great extent that didn't succeed,
Right.
because people manipulated record. That in my family, if I have 5 people, I took 40 acres and I gave 40 acres to my son, 40 to my daughter, and 40 to my dog, and 40 to my cat. So I subdivided the land into my own family.
Huh.
And the government was not very forceful in terms of getting it implemented. Then after some time we had a Tenancy Registration Act, that tenant who is cultivating a piece of land cannot be evicted by the owner of the land. So he or she will have right over the land for a period of time. Not implemented properly. Right. So every now and then there were progressive steps introduced, and the recent one was called Forest Rights Act, that people who live in the forest, indigenous people, who are evicted from the forest, if they are cultivating a piece of land before 2005, they will have right over that land. And under that act, 1.2 million people have got land in the last 5 years. So, tits and bits. So, not something very radical, but because of the pressure of various social movements, some reforms takes place off and on. But the most interesting thing I wanted to say is the Bhudan movement of India, the land gift movement of India, which is completely a voluntary efforts of land reform, not government-led, but people-led. So one person called Vinoba Bhave, a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi, walked through India for 14 years and got 4.2 million acres of land for redistribution. And part of it is distributed and part of it is not. But then there are government-led land reforms and people-led land reforms.
Right.
So it's a basket of various kinds of land reforms.
India has a great influence on Nepal, but what are some of the implications for the land and agrarian reform movement in India as it relates to Nepal? What can Nepal learn from India?
See, there was a time when we thought India will have a positive impact on Nepal. Now, with the arrival of globalization, this is not going to happen. Nepal will have to take decision on its own, not because of any influence from India, because in India, after globalization, many companies are coming, multinational companies are coming to invest, and investment is all on the basis of their demand for land, forest and water and minerals. And government of India, in the process of wanting to be a superpower, is giving out all resources to these companies to exploit and make profit. So there are many struggles in India that are trying to address this issue of people's control over land and resources as opposed to corporate control over land and resources. So India cannot give any model to Nepal. But then from the people's struggle, of India, what is emerging is, like in 2012 and 2007, Ekta Parishad organized a long march, 25,000 people walking from Gwalior to Delhi in 2007 and 100,000 people walking from Gwalior to Delhi in 2012. All that led to getting the government to agree not to forget the proper land reform and not go one way, one track, but also to see how land and resources can be made available to people. So many of those points in the agreement can be an inspiration for Nepal. At the same time, now we are also getting inspired from Nepal because the social movements of Nepal is also putting pressure on the government in Nepal to take progressive position on land and resources. And if I am correct, what I hear in the last 2-3 days, if all these political leaders will implement what they say,
Yeah.
I will be very happy to see Nepal making a headway and becoming an example for many other countries in terms of land reforms. See, altogether, this is a question of how do you design your development model, right? If your development model is basically growth-centric, it's all materialistic in its approach, then justice will be left behind, right? If it is just development without ethics, economics without ethics, then people will go the way they are going. So how do you spin these two together? Economics and ethics is what the social movements are trying in India, and that is what social movements are trying in various parts of the world. And I think Nepal is also lucky to have social movements which are trying to bring these two elements together and argue for it.
Very good. Thank you very much.